So a while back, I was watching a YouTube video of some YouTubers that live in Taiwan that often explore things out there, and they go out drinking a lot. One of the things there is to do out there. But one guy had just said, it's been a whole year since he had a drink. And I didn't realize that. I just never really paid attention that closely, I guess, or didn't see enough videos. But he just said, yeah, he read this book that he got from somebody else, and it changed things, and wanted to be in better shape and be more productive. Same things I think about as well. I went out and got the same book, the exact same book. Alan Carr, The Easy Way to Control Alcohol. And there are some reviews and videos, but not very many that kind of are more sort of critical and just say, well, I'm not sure how well it works. So I was actually a little surprised, and I don't know if they shut down those videos like Disney kind of does on some things, but I did buy the book and I read the book, and I'm just going to share my thoughts about the book today. Now, the secret in the book is, I guess, the easy way, which, I don't know, spoiler alert, it's just to kind of decide you're not going to drink ever again. And it says, it says repeatedly out throughout the book, you can't use willpower. But I kind of think, well, what exactly is willpower? So if you look up Webster's definition, it's the ability to control one's own actions, emotions, or urges. Alcoholics can't stop drinking through willpower alone. They need to alter behavior. That triggers the impulse to drink. James Atlas. So, okay, but isn't everything a kind of a decision to do or not do something is really a mental choice? That's willpower, really. It just all depends on how you define it. But it's kind of, I don't really understand the total difference. Well, I kind of do, but I'm not sure that choosing this method is going to actually work for everybody. Some people do. To be clear, a lot of people say it's worked for them. He says sold millions of books, but has it really worked and forever for people? I don't know. This is just, again, my own experience with it. So I'll go over the issues I have that I see like can be kind of problematic. Keeping in mind, a lot of people have had, well, either no issues or had great success. I just don't, and I haven't heard that many stories of people that haven't. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. To begin, yes, too many absolutes. The whole thing is kind of an all or nothing approach, which I don't know if I like, because it says the easy way to control alcohol, and it doesn't say to stop drinking entirely. And I kind of like, for me, the takeaway wasn't like, it's not that I never ever want to have a drink again. I just want to make sure I can cut back or be in total control or not go overboard when I do. It hasn't really been that big of a problem, which also may be the reason why I'm not like convinced it's the best solution, or at least not the best solution for me. It's just sort of, it helps, but how much, that's to be determined. I just don't like the absolutes when you market the book as control, and it's really not control, it's just give up entirely. Also, the book really, Alan, the original writer, he passed away some time ago, and he started this book, or his series, quite some time ago, so it has kind of a lot of outdated tone or references or examples. I just don't know how well they apply today. It looks like it might have been a little bit of rewriting in it, but and I can't tell, it doesn't say. But I kind of feel like, I'm not sure the voice really rings true to people in, like right now, 2024. So that's something to be considered. One of the examples I don't like is he has that whole ostrich thing about burying the head in the sand. And like when I was reading, I thought, wait, don't you know that that's a myth? That was sort of been busted a long time ago. And it goes on for several pages, and I just think, well, how can you kind of trust someone's logic and reasoning if they don't know something's a myth? And finally you get to a page that says, okay, I know it's been pointed out to me that that is a myth, but I still like to keep it in there because it's a good example. And I kind of think, well, yeah, I understand, but if you're using myths that don't work, what else is a myth that you just don't know has been debunked? So that just kind of bugged me. Why do I keep that in there if you know it's false? You can't think of any other example to use. Just, yeah, I didn't like that too much. Another issue I kind of had is there's no real there's no citations or scientific backing behind anything. It's all just kind of anecdotal evidence. Nothing wrong with anecdotal evidence. If it works for one person, it could work for a lot of people. But it doesn't, it's not really proven Well, I guess it kind of, you can consider it lightly proven if a lot of people swear by it, I suppose, but I haven't really seen any evidence of that. There's just no actual evidence of these methods working. I mean, you just got what people say. But again, that's okay, but it would be better to have, real like doctors behind it, or I mean, he names a few people, but I would like to see citations or other research papers supporting this. I think that would be very helpful. There are a lot of straw man arguments. So you set up the conversation and you ask the questions and get the answers that you want. So you kind of depict, kind of like, you pick and choose, cherry pick conversations that you would have, or just kind of invent them. But one of them, and it's like, it comes up with later in the book, it's like, well, what about, can I just have a drink like once in a while? And he's like, well, would you have arsenic once in a while? And the person's like, no, why would I ever do that? I'm like, exactly. So it's like, yeah, okay. But the conversation, I think more realistic would have been, can I have a drink once in a while? Would you have arsenic once in a while? I would not, but I also don't consider arsenic and alcohol to be the same thing. And you could say, well, no, technically it is the same thing. It's a poison. And you could argue about that fine, but it's just some of the arguments are kind of silly. And it's like, I don't think anyone's going to answer that way, or most people aren't going to answer that way when you say that. They're not going to say, oh, you're right, I wouldn't have arsenic, so why would I ever have alcohol? I don't know, stuff like that. There's just a lot of that in there. And we do have opinions, a lot of opinions, of course. Again, it's anecdotal. But there's, and again, this was written a long time ago, the original, so the whole about wine tasting and it all being kind of like, oh, that's just a bunch of, the whole taste of wine, or people don't appreciate it. It's just basically kind of saying that whole wine tasting is just a, all kind of nonsense. Like, no, I don't really think so. I think there is a lot to be considered for like tasting wine, and it can be just a very exquisite and enjoyable experience. So I think kind of just knocking all that off, and you kind of do. I mean, you kind of have to forego wine tasting if you want to go 100% sober. So that is something to be considered. But you can't just say, no, there's nothing to all that. That's just nonsense. Like, no, I think maybe people could consider that a long time ago, especially without the knowledge we have today. But with all the access we have today to good wines and great wines, garbage wines too, that you can't just say, wine tasting's like, nah, it's nothing. It is a strong thing. In fact, one of the reasons I don't want to be fully sober is just I don't want to give that up. I like that. It's an enjoyable thing. I like the taste of it. I don't need to be drinking gallons of it. I just want to be able to appreciate and enjoy a really nice wine. So he's kind of got this theory about detoxification. It's really not that bad, or, it's all in your mind type thing. There's not really physical. I'm not sure that's true. Maybe it is, I don't know, but I'm not convinced that the alcoholics don't go through some really intense detoxifying stages. In the same way that even heroin addicts are listed in there too. It's like, I am not sure it's just as I think it's kind of said, it's like a really bad flu with is it though? I don't know, I've never been there, but when you have that kind of arguments, you just kind of wonder, it's like, are you sure you know what you're talking about when it comes to things like that? Because those are some bold statements. Genetic dependency. Okay, this one is sort of him saying there's no real evidence that, and again, a long time ago, that alcoholism is hereditary or genetic or whatever, or we're physically have a need for it more than other people would, or that if we're an alcoholic, it could be, we've inherited that disease. I don't know, again, I don't have evidence, but to say it's not, or it is, that's kind of a problem without having anyone else back that up or any scientific evidence behind that. One person, again, it's just anecdotal. Yeah, I would say there's just so many odd examples. One about pregnancy. You can't just be a little pregnant. You can't just take a little drink, or you can't just be a little HIV. Again, kind of dated. Some of the examples I'm just not sure really work. I would say maybe it is time for the family or someone, the estate, to rewrite it and rethink some of the examples, because it almost does more damage than good sometimes. You do get a lot of text saying that there's zero benefits of alcohol, and yeah, I don't know really. We do have a lot about wine and resveratrol and things like that, or a little bit can be healthy. Some people now say those are mainly the wine industry's kind of results or scientific evidence. So I'm not sure. Or you can just say, look, there are kind of some benefits, but there are some risks, and the risks outweigh the benefits. As far as beer, you could argue maybe hundreds of years ago, people that were drinking beer were better off than people that weren't, because of all the tainted water, the cholera in the water. So there's things like that, but we don't really have those problems, at least in Western society these days. So you might have erased all the positive things about beer, but everything is considered negative, and you kind of do have to have that attitude with it, that alcohol 100% is a bad choice, and that's how you give it up entirely. All this being said, does it help? For me, it didn't convince me like to go cold turkey 100%, not yet at least, but it does help. I think having, it's like the easy way, it's still kind of willpower, but it's willpower supported by a lot of information and a lot of examination behind why you drinking and if it's really worth it. If you even have that kind of choice. I think some people are so addicted that it may not be just as easy as saying, I know the evidence, logically I shouldn't, but and so I will not, but it might be harder than that. For me, having these things to think about does help. So it's not like it doesn't help. Is it enough to get you over the edge if you really, really have a problem with it? I can't say. Is it a better to do this? Because it doesn't seem to like AA that much. It doesn't outright say it's just not the thing to do. It says, kind of admits different things for different people, but kind of downplays AA in a lot of ways. I don't know. I don't know that much about AA to really agree or disagree, but I think, different people have different needs and different solutions. I just think the more you know about it, especially if it's a huge problem in someone's life, the more it'll help. So having all this behind you, I mean, just read it and take away what works for you, and just don't worry about all the issues I said. That could help. Watching YouTube videos from doctors or people that kind of explain how alcohol is a poison, that can work. The more, in support groups and all that, that can work. It's like a muscle, and the more that muscle you build up can get stronger. I think willpower itself is a muscle, and the stronger you can get that muscle, the more easy it is to kind of say, nah, I'm not having a drink. But I mean, for the rest of your life, every time you go to a bar, or not a bar, at least, well, you go out to dinner, and you say, what would you like to drink? And you're going to know you're going to have that choice between an alcoholic drink or non-alcoholic. That's a choice, and that really is willpower. Depending on whatever you call it, it's just a mental choice in the moment. So if you can build up strength to say no the rest of your life, and maybe get momentum from like you've gone so far, maybe that'll help, or maybe you get weak because you've gone so far. Just it's so nuanced. And one of the things I do really like about it is it really has you examine all the instances of your past where you thought alcohol was making an experience better. Like a wedding, he says, isn't a wedding already a fun experience as it is? Did you need alcohol to make a wedding better? Do you need it to make a birthday party? Or, parties by nature should be fun anyway. So you could look at that and reflect and just think, was my experience actually better alcohol, or would it have been worse or less fun without alcohol? And those are really, really good evaluations to make. And I think having someone challenge you to make those evaluations can help a lot. For me, like one of the things I do is often when I'm taking a flight, I have a drink. It's free. They offer it to me, and I usually will. But I also wanted to get back to like being able to take flights with no drinks, or just having water or a diet soda or whatever. So I really did some evaluations. I think, why did I need a drink on that plane? Why, when I'm taking a flight, do I want to say, oh, give me a double scotch and sip that? Because what was the effect? Well, kind of that nice, pleasant, inebriated feeling. And that's why a lot of people do drink. It does kind of have a fun feeling, but it doesn't really last that long, and then they start to make you tired. And I was just thinking, well, it's great maybe if you just do want to sleep, but it also ruins your sleep. So but I also figure I can't read then as well, or I can't do anything on the computer or even watch a movie. It just sort of makes everything worse in a way. So it's actually reading it, I think it has given me a little more strength to say no to any drinks on a plane. Doesn't mean it's going to be always, but for me, I like having that power. I think I've increased that muscle, it's gotten stronger. So and another thing, like I said, it's like sleep. I think doctors do say alcohol does affect your sleep, and you can't sleep as soundly or deeply. If I'm not sleeping as deeply, then I'm not as well rested, and it's harder to work out the next day or get a lot of exercise or go on a long run or just feel a lot of energy. So I want to sleep better. And if you're not sleeping properly, you're probably going to get hungrier, so you're not going to be eating as well either. You also might be eating eating a lot more poorly when you're drinking too, and start make bad decisions. So all that stuff can and should be evaluated, And a book like that can kind of challenge you to do it. Do you have to have that book? I don't know, but it is one option. It's just the issues I said to deal with, but I kind of do recommend it in a way. I wouldn't like go to the courses or take the classes for me, but I think the book can be helpful. So despite everything I've said, I think it has been helpful. I just don't know if a person who's having a serious problem is just going to be able to buy a book and then read it and then be done with the problem forever. So it might be a lot more to it than that. But for someone like me, it's helped a little. Cheers.